Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Daily Bolt with your host, Dr. Jeff Tilley. Today's topic, more climate alarmism that frankly is just totally unnecessary. Sit back and relax and enjoy today's podcast, which comes to you from my car. And that's one reason you don't have the nice little sound effect, because I can't play that at the same time in my car with the phone and still have it work to record voice. So we're moving on ahead anyway. I am stuck in a traffic jam, and so I am passing the time by doing various work-related tasks, including this podcast, which I had actually hoped to do a couple of days ago and was not able to do. So I am referring in today's title to a recent study by a non-profit environmental organization that I believe is based in Europe. I've never heard of it. IUNC, I believe, is the name, the acronym. I'm not sure totally what it stands for. I don't know what their scientific credentials are. It doesn't appear to be affiliated necessarily with any university or anything, but they published a study, and I'm going to get into in future podcasts issues with what's really published and what isn't published, and the differences between the two. A study online talking about the fact that with climate warming and warmer oceans, there is less oxygen that can be dissolved into the oceans in warmer waters. I will take a number of issues with this study, even though the basic premise is quite sound. One of the issues I take with the study is that this has been a well-known fact in oceanography for quite some time. The fact that the ocean holds less dissolved oxygen at warmer temperatures than colder temperatures is not news. This is nothing new at all. And yet the study and the website, which was picked up by the BBC.com online news service, turned what would be a fairly standard result into the oceans are running out of oxygen. It's all going away because of climate change. And the BBC science writer, not knowing that much better himself, kind of kept with that narrative, which ends up being overly alarmist and overly extremist. And here's why. The reason that this is extremist is because the fact is, even though the ocean can hold less dissolved oxygen at warmer temperatures, that doesn't mean the oxygen is destroyed. It means it goes back into the atmosphere. Just like the ocean is a reservoir for carbon dioxide, and at warmer temperatures, more carbon dioxide can be at some point released into the atmosphere if you get the ocean warm enough. So here's the thing. With all of this chemistry going on, all these processes have already been put into climate models with about as much accuracy as we know how to represent them, based on lots of measurements that have gone on for decades in terms of physical and biological oceanography. In fact, a colleague of mine that I know has actually done some of her doctoral work on the issue of dissolved oxygen in the oceans and what happens when you get a warmer climate. So again, this is not news. This is not a new earth-shattering study, and it's not a big thing to panic about, because the processes are very, very gradual, and it's not a given that the oxygen is destroyed. Not at all. It just isn't stored in the oceans anymore, and it's in the atmosphere. And presumably, I would suppose, if you had enough dissolved oxygen in the oceans get released to the atmosphere and the percentage of oxygen concentration goes up enough, then there would be some serious problems, because, as has been shown in other studies, and you can even find ways to demonstrate this at home, though I wouldn't try it because it can get out of hand, an oxygen-rich atmosphere will be more likely to oxidize things, which includes having more dramatic and serious issues with things catching on fire and having fires that do exist spread faster because there's more oxygen to feed them. So we have that as a possible effect. But both the alarmist headline from the published study, and published online only, and the BBC.com news service basically tried to make it sound like, well, if we don't do something today, we're not going to have any more oxygen left and we're all going to die. And that's not the truth. The truth is, it changes where the oxygen is in the system. It doesn't necessarily mean it's destroyed. So, once again, we have the media. And in this case, it's the usually a little less alarmist BBC go off the deep end with a headline to sell newspapers and ads, advertising on their website, etc., 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 and making it sound like the world's going to end tomorrow. Is it any wonder we have issues with young people who come to trust news services and who don't know any better, and even old people who don't know any better, thinking that we've got a much worse off crisis than is the case, and you end up having big crowds of demonstrators and protesters saying we have to do something today. Everything must happen today, now, because of this false sense of urgency that's been created. Now, I'm not saying that this isn't a problem. However, it's not nearly the crisis that it's being portrayed to be. Once again. So, word to the wise, folks. Don't trust everything you read, especially not headlines. Do your own research, look into it, and consult people who actually know what they're talking about. That's all for this edition of the Daily Bolt. I'm Dr. Jeff Tilley. Hopefully next time we'll have the sound effects back, but if not, we'll still press on. I hope you're having a good week in this holiday season, and God bless.